Slovyansk and Kramatorsk are falling into the sights of the Russian forces, but there are a few things they need to get out of the way before they can advance towards Slovyansk. That first thing, of course, is Old Man Winter, which imposed terrible conditions on both sides, both the Russians and the Ukrainians alike. So it was rainy, and then it was freezing rain, then it was snowing, and then it was extremely cold, and then it would warm up, and then it would freeze again. And all this meant certainly widespread sickness and fatigue among the soldiers, the difficulty of staying warm, always getting wet, and dealing with fighting off any hypothermia in the trenches. So this has been a terrible winter. I don't see that either the Russians or Ukrainians advance particularly well, except for the Ukrainian advance in the Danilivka areas, moving towards Uspenivka. But other than that, if you take a look at this line, you don't see many advances now for quite a while. But also these areas have been covered in a kind of fog of war. So both sides have been very secretive and guarded about the information of their advances, where their soldiers are at, because now we are getting into some of the key areas and no one wants to give away any important information which they think could be beneficial to their enemies. So here we have the city. In the center of the screen, you see Slovyansk, and below it, Kramatorsk. These are two key cities in the Oblast of Donetsk. So this is what Russia needs to secure in order to finish the rest of the battle for Donetsk Oblast, and to claim one of their goals, which was the Donbass. So they're getting very close to reaching their goal. Now, like I say, the first enemy was Old Man Winter, and that is coming to an end, which means that there should still be muddy conditions, very difficult for the soldiers to advance. Their feet sink in the mud. Their vehicles are not able to get traction, so they become sitting ducks. And so this will continue to impede any widespread advances of either side. And the second obstacle then is Lyman, or Lyman as some say. And Lyman has been falling into a cauldron for quite some time. The advances are slow, and so but also this city has been covered very well in the fog of war. It's hard to say exactly what is going on, but if we would assume that the Russians are starting to envelop this city in a cauldron, then it means that the Russians are finishing their battle for the city, and they will go to a street-by-street clearing operation. And so we could still be quite a time from Lyman, or Lyman, however you want to say that, from being captured. But it needs to be captured if the Russians want to continue on towards Slovyansk. At the same time, you can see that Slovyansk is about 6 kilometers away or so from the closest Russian advance. That is extremely close, and that should be extremely worrisome for the Ukrainian defenders of Slovyansk. So what we have to the north of Lyman is the Russians getting to the Seversky Donetsk River, and with the river frozen during the wintertime, it was easy for Ukrainian transit back and forth on foot, possibly even by car or by truck, depending on the thickness of the ice. But now that the winter is ending and the ice is melting, Yarova should fall quickly to the Russians, because the Ukrainians don't have really a way of bringing supply and support and soldier rotations, especially if the river now is melted. So this becomes a huge problem for Ukraine. So I would think that they would move their troops back on the other side of the river and try to defend more defensible lines where they can be equipped and rotated with greater frequency. And so once the Russians get to this river, then they will begin to move south and focus on enveloping Lyman in a greater cauldron, and eventually cutting off all supply and support. Then the other thing the Russians need to do is to move up from the east of Slovyansk, which they are doing. They are getting ever closer, inch by inch, towards Slovyansk, and the people living in Slovyansk should be hearing the various discharges much more clearly as the war gets closer and closer to the outskirts of Slovyansk. Kramatorsk would be, from what I can understand, would be fought after the Russians secure Slovyansk. And so that is the situation here in the Slovyansk-Kramatorsk area. And it is very slow, but also, due to the winter conditions and weather conditions, but also the fog of war continues to cover this area. No one's showing their hand too much, but you can see that the Russians now are really starting to push forward, and they will start entering into the urban area of Slovyansk, and that will be a huge morale breaking news flash for the Ukrainian military to know that the Russians have reached Slovyansk. This is a key city for Russia, very historic city, deep connection to the city. So the Russians really want to get there as quickly as they can, but to cut their losses the best they can, they are doing the advances with artillery and drones, and until the area is safer for their soldiers to advance, they aren't moving forward. So this keeps the front line quite stagnant for periods of time, and suddenly there's an advance, and then there's more period of time where the front line is stagnant. But I wouldn't say that there's anything now in this front line that will be stagnant from here on forward, because with winter ending and the Russians looking to try to close out some of their special military operation goals by the end of the year, then they're going to have to push on much more aggressively. So as you can see, we have the power plant here that they want to secure. Of course, the Ukrainians could blow that up before they leave, leaving the Russians with nothing. But we'll see what happens there. And so this is a key area getting to Slovyansk, securing it, and then securing the whole of the Donetsk Oblast. So that is my report on Slovyansk. If you like this video, please hit the like button, share, and subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you back for future videos. Have a good day. Take care. Bye-bye.